You step into Egypt, and the ancient designers of that created this kind of mirrored universe. I had this experience in Hathor's temple. I was working for Gaia. I put my forehead in between my hands, and I had all of this crazy energy come into my body. It felt like every single emotion in the entire universe all at once.
We went and saw the screening of your film Illusion, and I was glued to the sea.
One of the things that we really focus on this documentary is these relic geometry patterns in the universe. We are translating the very relic geometries that made all of this universe through our human bodies into our 3D experience. You're actually turning the universe into a story.
Tell me about the first supernatural experience you've had or something that you've witnessed in your life.
Oof, the first? We got to go way back.
Not the first one you had, the first one that comes to mind. Like, what was something that shook your reality to its core?
So I had this experience in Hathor's temple, Temple of Dendera in Egypt. I was working for Gaia at the time. I used to be head of content, and I was there with Graham Hancock and his wife, Santha. And we were doing some scouting for a film shoot we were going to do. It's July. It's 120 degrees. No one is in this temple.
It's literally 120 degrees?
It was like 100. It wasn't even like, it wasn't heat index. It was 120 degrees. Maybe it was like 119, but it was disgustingly hot. So nobody was there. They were kind of still talking. He wanted to do this whole thing on the zodiac, which is on the ceiling, on the second floor. And I said, I just want to walk around. I love this temple. It's so beautiful. And there's a Holy of Holies in the middle. And then around the Holy of Holies is these 13 rooms. And I went into one of the random rooms. Now, I can't read hieroglyphs. There's no artifacts there to mark what happens in each room. I just went into one. I put my hands on the wall, on one of the corners of the wall. And then I put my forehead, I don't know why I did this, but I put my forehead in between my hands. And at this moment, I had all of this crazy energy come into my body. And the way that I explain it, it felt like every single emotion in the entire universe all at once. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It just was intense. And I was like, whoa. And I took my hands off of the wall and my forehead, and I was just like this, like, oh my God, what was that? At that moment, the Egyptologist that we were with comes in and he's like, hey, where have you been? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I thought it was like 10, 15 minutes, me and my head against this, this wall. Apparently I was missing for like 2 hours.
Really?
And they were really mad at me, of course, because they thought I did it purposely. Yeah. And I didn't say anything. But I was like, I don't know how to explain that experience. And even though I love talking about this stuff and I'm super spiritual and I do all the things, meditation, I've gone on a bunch of journeys, I try to stay really pragmatic with my adventures because I want to be able to justify them because it's kind of my job as a filmmaker. So I didn't say anything. And then for every night for about 2 weeks, I had this intense dreams where like the hieroglyphs would come out of the wall and they turn into all these calculations. I have no idea what happened to me, but I knew if I was going to start my own company that I was going to call it Hathor Studios, not because of the goddess, but because of that experience. I cannot explain it to this day. And I thought, whatever that was, I want to make sure I put that in my company.
Yeah. That's really interesting. When you describe feeling every emotion at once, that's how I, however poorly, try to describe the 5-MeO-DMT experience. It's like one of those things. It's like silly to try to explain it because it's just beyond. But that's one of the ways that I've tried to explain that. Where it's just this overwhelming field of totality. Like, yeah, you're like everything. It's like the opposite of the void, It's like if you could flip the void and invert it, and rather than a void, it's everything all at once, all the time, that kind of feeling.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot.
I've never felt personally drawn toward Egypt or going there or even learning much about it. My wife, Allison, who you met, is really wants to go to Egypt badly. So I'm gearing up for that. But one thing that is interesting about it to me is the stories that I've heard from people, the experiences they've had there, from people that I know and trust, and I know that they're not dishonest or delusional. So
Yeah.
I trust the validity of their experience. So for that reason, for that reason, I'm like, I want to experience something like that. I mean, I've heard people getting like blown across the yard. They're like, they get blown by energy and like almost hurt themselves because they got, like flying through the air, just crazy ass stuff that
that's crazy.
Defies explanation.
Yeah. I honestly think, this is what I tell my people when I do tours, is that I feel like you step into Egypt, and the ancient designers of that created this kind of mirrored universe. And we don't experience that, but for some reason, like when we're at home or just in normal everyday cities and stuff like that, but there's something about the way that that's still operating, where you step into a place and you're like fractaled, where you're in one of like a fun house, and you're seeing all these versions of yourself all at once. So you have these past life memories, or you have some energy you've never been in contact with, good and bad, all at once, all at once, like we're explaining. And your brain tries to grab onto one of those things. Like, I saw myself in a past life, or I felt this energy, or did this. But it's weird. One of the things that I try to get people to do is ground. Like, do not try to fly out in space, because when you step into these places, you're literally accessing every version of yourself that could ever have existed in the universe. And you got to make sure that the right information is coming to you at this time, not just grabbing information.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's one of the things that I feel like I should be responsible for when we take people there. Like, okay, let's just ground. Ask the universe, what am I supposed to know right now? Instead of what's just coming to me. Yeah, because then you might get caught up and thrown across the room.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with going into any of the spiritual realms, is it's so easy to get distracted, right? There can be a lot of bells and whistles to those types of experiences that kind of take you out of the essence of what there is to gain,
Yeah, at that moment in time. I mean, you have to think of like time. We're calculating time, right? So we're in this moment expressing who we are. Like, we're always trying, sometimes in the spiritual community, we're always trying to jump time. We're trying to be like, okay, well, I want to know what's going to happen in the future. I want to go back because I want to heal something, which is great. But also we have to be not just in the present moment, but we're here to express something. We're here to contribute to the whole. And I think we're so easily wanting to go on a different timeline when this is the one we're supposed to bring all the information through. And when you're in someplace like Egypt, it's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to know right now? Like, what would be my gift coming here, getting this information that I could use right now in my 3D experience to bring into the world? And that's what I think is so fascinating. I have to tell not a funny story, but okay, so there's a temple I take everybody at like 5 a.m. Everybody's sleep deprived. It's dark out. We go to Isis's temple, the Temple of Philae, and it's on an island. So everybody has to wake up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, because we got to take this tiny little boat. It's dark. Everybody's like, oh, I don't want to go. I'm tired. I haven't slept. I'm jet lagged, right? And it's like an Indiana Jones movie. We like pull up to this dark temple, and I do this purposely. We go into the temple, into the Holy of Holies by the time we get there, 5 a.m. So like 5:05, we pass through the gates of Isis's temple, and then we go into the Holy of Holies, and there's still an altar there from the original temple. And we do a meditation. Every time, there's about 5 people on that trip that get, they either lost a loved one, or they have like strange relationships, like people that they love that don't talk to them, or they have some miscommunication going on. We leave that temple because we watch the sun come up, and we have like a whole thing that we do. And then we leave the temple, and Later that day, every single one of those people either get a sign from somebody who has passed on, or they get a phone call from those people that they're estranged. One woman on my last trip, she hadn't talked to her son in 3 years. And he called her later that night and she started crying. And he was like, I was just thinking about you. And I want to talk. I don't want to go on like this. And she's like, he hasn't spoken to me in 3 years.
Wow.
So there's something with that temple specifically that connects us to all of our family, our personal relationships, that once you pass through the gates, it activates it, and all of those ancestors and the people living and the people that have passed on connect to you all at that moment in time. And I don't know how to explain that, but I can only explain it through people's personal experiences.
Yeah, that's wild. It's really interesting how with sacred sites and places that have rarefied energy like that, it's really difficult to explain them to someone who hasn't experienced it.
Yeah.
And also, I think humans have a hard time believing in something that is not tangible. It's kind of one of our shortcomings, I think. It's like no one has an issue like with your cell phone. You can do FaceTime to someone across the world, right? And we're like, oh yeah, that's just normal. We just get acclimated to it. It's like, well, how is that actually happening? Because you can't see that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not the real person yet. There they are. So we have so much evidence of kind of the unseen realms in different ways, but it's so difficult for many of us to kind of buy into it unless it really smacks us upside the head like that.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, my son called me for the first time in 3 years.
Yeah.
Something is happening because I'm in this specific space. So there's that. And then also it's like, why do we have to go to Machu Picchu or to Egypt to have these experiences? It seems like the way we build things and kind of the infrastructure of society is not built around that goal at all. You have to go to an ancient cathedral or some sacred site. It's like, why can't each of our houses be its own sacred site? Which is what we're always trying to do here within the confines of a drywall box. It's like, how can we create that kind of healing energy and that coherence in a space? Have you heard of these homes called geoships?
I have, yeah.
Oh my God. I
haven't been in one. Have you been in one?
Yeah, they had a little model one. I did a podcast in one with their CEO last summer out in Nevada City. And, there's a few things like that popping up. But I'm like, when is humanity going to catch up? And that just becomes the norm. Why wouldn't everyone want to live in something like a geoship? They're amazing. It's like being inside a crystal, because it's like they use this stuff called bioceramics, and it's essentially like ground up minerals and crystals. So you're like inside a crystal, but because it has that shape, there's just a way that the energy and even sound moves around. It sounds very unique in there,
Yeah.
And they're also shout out to GeoShip. They're mold proof. They can't grow mold because there's no substrate for the mold to grow on. They're, I wouldn't say EMF proof, but definitely have the capacity to deflect a lot of the radiation coming at them. And you can't burn them down. They're fireproof. And they are built to last 400 or 500 years. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. Why aren't we making all of our houses that way?
Exactly.
That's really funny about. I just did like a little thing on this because of my documentary is about geometry shapes, but just like really simple things if you think about it. Like most of our living as humans 12,000 years ago was mostly round, shaped like a dome.
Yeah.
The geoship is a round container. But, huts, kivas, most of human civilization was building kind of these round structures that we would live in. And the idea was that it was a communal living space. You didn't divide the kitchen area to the sleeping area. It was all like the energy was all kind of swirling around in one space. It wasn't bouncing. So about 12,000 years ago, we started creating civilizations and agriculture. And there was this idea, like, let's shove a bunch of people into square boxes because we can get more people in one space. But then we can also take a house, a living space, and separate jobs. So kitchen square, living square. And now we're separating people into jobs and situations, and that's how we're going to stay. So the original design for humans was to live into this kind of circular, communal understanding and pattern. There was no separation. And we created that because, it's better for space, and then people know what their jobs are, and, all of this. And it's funny. I mean, that's just the simple explanation of like the shape of something and how it creates separation of just separation. Yeah. So we've gotten to this point where I can't, like, having a roundhouse is sort of weird. Right? I mean, there's not many people that live in a round house, right? Everybody has a square house.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's like we're at this point now where there's so much information coming, and we're returning back to, well, this clearly is nice, but it's not working. And we're at that moment now. Okay, so you're saying about the geoship. That totally makes sense. All the things that we're complaining about, the mold, the material of the house, the EMF, the house burning down, all of that. And here's a design that takes care of all of that. We're still like, well, I don't know, like, where are we going to fit that,
Totally. Yeah. Well, I put a deposit on one just to kind of set that in motion, right, as a vision. And it wasn't a huge deposit, thankfully, but I didn't ask my wife, I was just like online, I'm about to do the interview. I'm like, I want one of these things. Fuck it, And then I told her, and she's like, maybe we should discuss this. I don't know if I want to live in a dome. I got to like go hang out in one. So we went and hung out in it, and I was like, so what do you think? You ready? It was a smaller one. And she's like, she did like the energy in there. But it's really, what's interesting about it, as I mentioned, is the sound. I mean, the one we were in didn't have carpets and things like that. So the sound was very bouncy. And I think I was acutely aware of it because we're recording, and you're always like mindful of sound, as you know, when you're shooting something. But the echo was kind of trippy, it was it really reverberates. It's like you're inside the body of a guitar or a drum or something, So it's like, that's what I realized. You'd have to really kind of work with some way to dampen the sound, which might just, could be a bunch of rugs. But yeah, it's an example of how conditioned we are to live in a boxed life, that it seems radical. But this is like the thing I'm always thinking with, we have like grocery stores that are called a health food store, and we have like a designation for organic food or conventional food. Everything's inverted, right? It's like conventional food is organic food. All food stores should be a health food store,
Yeah.
It's like, but we just get acclimated to these things and they just become normal. And then something that is actually more true and natural is the outlier, such as living, inside a dome.
Yeah, we've gotten so far from that. Just because I've covered so many shows on ancient civilizations, people are always like, how did they know where that star was and to align it perfectly? I mean, it is amazing and mind-blowing. Like, how did they align that star at that moment in time to open up the door and, do whatever pattern it's supposed to do on the back of the ritual table? But you got to think, those people were so in touch naturally, their body, their mind, the consciousness of that civilization was so in tune with the universe itself that it was unnatural not to know where the energy spots were.
Right.
We have to do all this work to be like, okay, well, what kind of technology can prove that what I feel is really happening? Mm-hmm. But back then, you have to think of, they knew where to build that temple because this was the moment. I mean, I'll just go back to Egypt because I spent so much time there. But there's a goddess at marking of the inside of the temple. When you walk in, she's always there. Her name's Seshat. She's got a 7-pointed star above her head, and she has these 2 things that look like dowsing rods. And she marks where the energy point of that temple is, always. And so the idea was the priests or the priestesses or whoever decided to build the temple said, I worked with Seshat, and she told me this was the energetic point. This was the cross point of which I need to create the doorway into the temple. So that was just natural.
Yeah.
We were like dumbfounded. We're like, God, how did they do it? If we ever figure out how they built the Great Pyramid, it might be just somebody was meditating and lifted up some rocks through sound and put it in there. And we're like, oh, so great. And then, maybe we'll have that technology.
It's like people that can bend spoons times a trillion. You know what I mean? Someone's like, moving the giant boulder in place. The thing, and I want to talk about your film because it was fucking awesome. But when it comes to these sacred sites and all of this technology that we can't explain, one thing, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, that has always perplexed me is what happened, like what shut that down, right? What I really got from your film, there's a lot of kind of messages embedded within it, but one is that there were times in human history where we were more intuitively tapped in and we're integrated to nature and we're able to, build these amazing sacred sites and cathedrals and, like at some point, there's cathedrals all over the world that have these bells, right? Even every town center had a bell, which is of course like frequency, right?
Yeah.
And then all the bells were removed. And then, all of these sites were buried maybe by some natural cataclysm. But it seems like there's like a cutoff point where access to this type of information and this life way was kind of erased from history. There's so many gaps in the official narrative of history, even in Egypt. I mean, I'm not an expert by any stretch, but I've met more people like you that are kind of coming at it from a certain lens, and then you have the kind of the gatekeepers of the official narrative or the official history.
Yeah.
And there's often conflicts with those. So I'm wondering if you've kind of narrowed down, like, who did it? When did it happen? Like, how did we get where we are when we used to be somewhere seemingly more advanced in so many ways?
Yeah. God, I wish I had someone to blame. It's so much easier.
Right, I know.
We could just find one person who did all of this.
Yeah.
We could just sleep at night. Dr. Sue Morter actually has a great line in the film where she said there was a level of consciousness that was celebrated across the world, and for some reason, it just stopped.
It's like someone turned the lights off.
Someone turned the lights off.
Yeah.
So I think it's a multiple of things. I think that there was a cataclysm. There's a lot of people that talk about this, specifically Graham Hancock talks about like a meteorite hitting the planet and causing this, maybe like kind of the story of Atlantis. There was this massive flood all over the planet, and it caused a lot of instability. And I think that something like that happened, and that caused all of these civilizations that really trusted nature to not trust nature anymore.
Oh, interesting.
And this is just my belief, just given all the different pockets of research and people's stuff that I've read and put together into some of the shows I've written. And because of that, they've created these logical systems, that then could control nature. Let's just go back to the house situation.
Right.
We had these round-shaped houses that were fitting into nature, and we're like, no, we're going to control nature. It's harder with sound. You were saying that those geoships are harder with sound, but it's harder to control temperature in a round space. It's easier to control temperature in a square space, right? So I think the idea was we don't trust nature anymore. So all that stuff, even the feminine stuff, we got to get rid of that. We can't have that. We can't trust that, because look what it did to us. So we're going to create systems and thought processes to control nature, disconnecting us from the natural processes that we're talking about. I think that's what happened. And then it turned into a way to transition spirituality into religion, which then gave us rules and laws to live by. Otherwise, nature would get out of control and come back and get us, right?
Yeah.
Like, the God from the Old Testament, or Zeus, if you humans if you keep doing this, we're going to come down and get you, So it was the whole idea of like, well, now we have to do this framework stuff. We have to follow all the laws and processes. Otherwise nature's going to get out of control and we're all going to perish again. And I feel like that's what happened, because you're right. It feels like someone turned the lights off, but I think it was a survival thing. And
that's an optimistic point of view. I mean, it makes sense. I think I'm always just, looking for the bad guy. That's part of human nature, right? If we could just figure out who the baddies are, then we can prevent them from doing this thing again, right? It's like if there's this.
Well, okay. So maybe that, let's just say Melissa knows the truth, right? Which we'll just play along with this little game. Let's say that all happens. Well, then you're going to have people that are going to want to capitalize on that because people are afraid. Somebody says, you know what we should do? We should try to control nature. And everyone's like, oh, how do we do that? And then somebody's like, boom, I got an idea. And I'm going to take over this whole conversation, right? I mean, yes, so there has to be somebody. And then that turns into secret societies and different groups. I mean, a lot of people talk about this thing called mystery schools in Egypt. And it was this like secret thing. And then you got invited to be in part of it. But mystery schools were, Christianity started to take hold of ancient Egypt. And they weren't really allowed to practice what they already knew. So there was a pocket of people that were like, well, we're still going to do all of our weird connection to nature stuff. And we're not going to tell anybody. And that was the mystery school. So it wasn't like in ancient Egypt, there was a mystery school. No, the mystery school was because those people still wanted to like practice connecting back to nature, where everybody else was living in fear of the wrath of God and wanting to come through. So, you're always going to find people are going to capitalize on consciousness. And that's happening today. This idea that there's a war on consciousness, there's a war on what's authentic. And we're returning back to that. We're returning back to the idea of like the mystery school. The mystery school is just returning back to our original state of being connected to nature.
I used to think burnout was just the price you had to pay for being productive. Then I found something that helps me stay focused for as long as I need without feeling smoked afterward. It's called NewCalm. It uses a neuroacoustic software to help shift out of fight or flight and into deep recovery in like 10 minutes. And the cool thing is there's no gadgets to buy or haul around. You just throw on headphones, open the app, and within minutes you start to downshift or upshift if that's what you're looking for. I've been busy writing a book for the past couple years, and it's one of the most mentally demanding things I've ever done. I'm talking hours and hours of deep focus, revisiting old memories, and organizing a ton of ideas. So before I start a writing session, I'll use one of their flow state tracks to get me into Zen. Then I'll lock in with a focus track for the next few hours of writing. And I'll tell you what, my wife can attest to this. When I have those headphones on, it's literally impossible to distract me. I'm like a machine. Then afterward, I'll use recharge or rescue to help my brain and body recover from hours of intense work. Just 20 minutes of that feels like a full nervous system reset, and NewCalm science supports that. I highly recommend you check out NewCalm, and here's how you do it. Go to lukestory.com/NewCalm to start your free 7-day trial. That's free 7-day trial, folks. You'll also save 15% off your subscription. So whether you need better sleep, sharper focus, or a fast reset, NewCalm has a track for it. And again, here's the link, lukestory.com/NewCalm. That's NUCALM to get that 15% off. And whether or not you buy it, I highly recommend you at least give yourself 7 days for free. Beautiful. So over the years, I'm a big documentary fan. I feel like if I'm not learning something, I'm kind of wasting my time. I don't know. I guess entertainment has its place, but I don't really read fiction. I don't watch a lot of, kind of scripted shows and movies and things like that. I'm just like, I want more reality. A lot of the films in your genre aren't very well produced. You know what I mean? It's like, right. They don't have budgets. It's not like the people aren't talented. So I'm always walking into something like that with low expectations, just in terms of, production value and a cohesive message. And, we went and saw the screening of your film Illusion last night, and I was like glued to the seat. I just loved it. It was so aligned for me in terms of just kind of my understanding of reality and what this life is all about. And it was also just really, I don't know, it was educational and super funny. It was just really well done. So kudos for making a film in a genre that's kind of, difficult to do well for various reasons.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's really great.
It's so hard making a film. It's painful. It's like this this birthing process. Like the Dark Night of the Soul, like is usually an edit. And you're like, this is the worst film ever. And you go through a whole crisis and, you come out. It's like a spiritual journey.
How long did it take from start to finish?
About 1.5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. When I was watching it, I thought this must have taken her 5 years.
Oh, no. And I was
There's so
late.
much travel involved too.
Oh, yeah. So much travel. I literally, we were in like 6 different countries or something like that. Yeah, I think so. I did it all in a month. And my husband was like, I said, you can come with and you can be my behind the scenes person. And there was one moment where we had just got it in at midnight and I had to get up at 3 for Stonehenge because I wanted to be there right, because we had rented out all of Stonehenge to film. And I wanted to be there right when the sun was coming up and it was going to be a clear day, which is impossible in the UK to get no clouds. And there's one moment my husband was like, okay, he's like, that's it. I quit. The schedule is too crazy. But yeah, I was supposed to be done with it in December and that was still late. But yeah, I kind of had to go through, besides making a film is difficult, the things that I was presenting in that film, it was weird. The universe wanted me to embody those things that I was saying in there on such a deep way that it just wouldn't finish until I was actually embodying those messages that I was saying in the film. And not that like I would make a film and be like, not embody the message or say, just say things just to put in a film. But it was really weird. There was one moment where I'm like, what is up with, why can't I finish this film? And there's this moment I realized it's my energy. It was my energy that needed to change in this trajectory. I won't give away like the whole film, but at the end, there's a personal moment where I say, there's nobody against me. This is me. This is, I'm now realizing that all of my struggles and the things that I'm bumping up against I'm creating, and then creating a resistance, and then creating a story on top of it.
Yeah.
And I know that it's so cliche because everyone talks about that, but there was this moment in the film where I like literally got it. I'm like, oh, okay. And then the film went. We finally were able to like finish the film within a month.
Well, I got that too toward the end. I mean, I like to think I've worked pretty hard on myself, and I've definitely evolved a lot in this lifetime. I started from such a low place. There's a lot of contrast, so it's like, okay, I'm doing all right. But toward the end, just this idea, again, like you said, it's like, oh, we create our own reality, right? It's like, yeah. But it's true, and that's the thing that hit me at the end. I was like, because I find myself late. I just finished a big project myself, writing a book that was just would never end, until I was like 2 weeks past my final deadline. And then I had no choice but to end, right? But in that process of watching the film, especially toward the end, I could see, oh, wow, a lot of this, what I experiences overwhelm and stress just because I'm a very productive person. I take a lot on. I kind of have a lot of moonshots in life, right? I was like, dude, I'm literally just creating overwhelm and stress because of how I'm holding what I'm doing, right? It's not that I'm doing too much or I have too many demands upon myself. It's that not all the time, but at times I'm viewing my life and my work from a place of victimhood, in a sense, right? It's like, oh, why do I have to do all this? It's like, dude, you signed up for it. You decided to come here and jump in a human body and have this experience for a reason. Yeah. And you're, doing your best to live your purpose. And guess what? Like, that means you're going to be pushing up against your own self-doubt and perfectionism, and all the things that make what you're doing stressful are coming from within. It's, in other words, like, it's not exogenous stress. It's how I'm responding or reacting to what I have on my plate on any given day, So I had that moment at the end too. I was like, oh man, I'm pretty aware of a lot of this stuff. And at the same time, it's like, there's always room for improvement. So I'm over here, like, I think most people that know me, they would probably say, oh, Luke's a super chill guy, he's super zen, he's very happy, like, meditating for freaking ever. But inside my experience, oftentimes there's a lot more stress and anxiety going on that no one would probably have any idea about, except my wife, because she hears me stomping around, It's like, oh my God, we really do. It's so much about our perception. Like, that's the thing I keep coming up against, right? Is like, you could look at the world that we're in today as just absolute abject hell and suffering and just evil everywhere, right? Yet at the same time, people like you are making films that are successful because there's so many people that are waking up at the same time, So what's the difference between like an NPC that's completely unconscious and suffering and creating their own demise versus someone who's living in a state of absolute bliss? They're living in the same world objectively, but their subjective experience is light years apart, solely because they've learned how to master their own, as you would say, shape or energy. It's like, no one out there is changing my frequency. I'm allowing it to be changed because my own internal coherence and integrity is not strong enough to withstand those inputs.
Yeah.
So I was having a little moment at the end too. I was like, am I really living this or not? So it's very empowering, I think, in that way. The way that you did the film, there's all this information about the nature of reality and how we fit into it. It's like, okay, that's great, but what do we do? Like, how do I improve my experience so that I can be a net positive while I'm here on this earth plane?
Yeah. And one of the things, I talked to Matthias afterwards. Everybody who's in this film, nobody knew what the film was about, and they had never watched it. This is their first time watching this film with all of you.
That's so funny. I love that.
And first of all, I want to say I love that they trusted me, but they were sort of like, I have no idea what this film is about. And then afterwards, they were like, I loved it. This is great. Matthias said, being unconscious is just as important as being conscious, because it does create what the shape is that you are trying to project in the world. I mean, like all the, me too, like all that anxiety you feel is this, like, there's still space there that you're right. You're letting something else come in and influence you instead of you being strong enough in whatever that critique is about yourself. And, when you do a lot of work on yourself, there's always that moment you're like, okay, I'm ready, like, I got it. And that literally next 5 minutes, you're like, maybe I don't got it.
Totally.
Okay, there's a little room where I have to work on that. I think it's, I have this, there was moments in this film where I had to like pull back because I don't want to say the things that I feel inside, which are, there's a lot of terms like people say, like, be kind or just be happy or have happy thoughts and, all this kind of stuff, which is true. But to get there, there's like, we're jumping to the conclusion of, okay, just be happy, have happy thoughts, be in the moment. Like, I did Dr. Joe Dispenza's movie Source, be present, like, go through the emotions, live those emotions. All that is true because it gets you there faster, but we still have to embody those moments when we feel the anxiety, because we have to know why we feel that anxiety. What is it that's empty inside that we have to figure out? And then you're going to have a much stronger projection when you get to that moment where you're like, okay, I'm ready to feel those emotions. I'm ready to have that happy thought. Like, this is real. This is authentic. This is deep inside of me. And there's a lot of, I think, in the spiritual community, there's a lot of people kind of trying to fake it till you make it, which works, does work, kind of gets you in a better state. But it just my own journey with this film, there were some things that I was nervous about, like that I wasn't sure about. And it was so weird. I was like, come on, I just want to finish this film. I was like, no, you are not ready to say these things because they're not coming from you, that you are saying that they are.
Right. Right.
So it's just, I can say that, but I had to like live that to just finish the film. And it's just so crazy. I hope I'm making sense here.
Totally. Well, it's like, yeah, I think for many of us that are on this path, there's like a fantasy of collective utopia. We look at, we surmise what it might have been like in Atlantis or Egypt and these ancient cultures where we kind of idealize them in a way where everyone was enlightened, right? And so we kind of have this craving to experience a world wherein everyone is at a higher level of consciousness, right? And there's just, less suffering, less violence, less evil, but also within ourselves. But it's like the thing I wrestle with, well, not so much, I think I've kind of surrendered to this, is that we need the contrast of this duality in order to have something to push up against, right? Like if I didn't have the capacity to be violent and evil, then how would I have anywhere to get to, right? It's like if we lived in a utopian, celestial realm here on Earth, then it's like, how would we learn anything? How would we evolve if there was not a lower place to begin with, right? It's like in my own life, I think because I've lived in such low consciousness for so many years and, just experienced so much suffering and probably caused a lot of it too. It's like, now I know I don't want that. So what do I want? I want this thing over here. But if everything was love and light and bliss and all, like
you would appreciate it.
Like, why would we need to be here? I guess is what I'm saying, right? We wouldn't need to be in a physical experience in a physical body. We would just be in some etheric realm or in another dimension that was outside of this kind of visible light spectrum, right? And maybe that's where we go when we die. Who knows, right? I mean, I know many people like Jerry, has had a near-death experience and psychedelic experiences. You can go somewhere that isn't here, but it's just as real as here. And in those places, it seems to be outside of the duality, right? It's like the closer you get to source, the less contrast there is. But then how do you evolve and move forward as a soul if there's nothing to push up against?
Yeah.
It's like we kind of need the collective suffering and darkness so that we can make the climb. And it's been my experience that in my own life, it's the same way. So if I didn't, if I wasn't asking myself questions at the end of your film, like, oh yeah, I need to work on that a little bit, I'm still falling a little short, then if I was already there, there's nowhere to get to, I guess is what I'm saying, So the thing that I'm always kind of trying to balance is accepting that the world and this reality is exactly how it's supposed to be at this moment. All right, you guys, I don't love the term biohacker, but let's say I've been in the health optimization game for a minute. I'm basically obsessed with solutions to what ails us. So supplements, cold plunges, red light, all the things, right? But if you're not managing the energetic field in which you live, even the best inputs like those don't land the way you think they do. Because unfortunately, these days our bodies are constantly interacting with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell towers, an invisible load your nervous system has to process 24/7. This is why you can be doing everything right and still feel a little off. And that's exactly what got me into Lila Quantum Tech. It's a suite of products designed to support your biofield and help your body stay resilient to EMF stress. At home, I use their quantum block to harmonize the environment here in my office studio and support a more coherent signal all around me. Then when I leave the compound here, I wear the Heal 360 capsule. It's got quantum charged titanium spheres inside it, so it helps take the edge off that constant background noise when I'm out in the world. And when the exposure peaks, times like air travel, traffic, and so on, they've got EMF blocking clothing that blocks against 99% of measurable wireless radiation. This line of clothing is clutch when you're walking into a high EMF environment. To get yourself dialed in with all that stuff, here's what you do. Go to lukestory.com/LeelaQ and use the code Luke10 for 10% off your first order. That's lukestory.com/LeelAQ. Because the real upgrade isn't doing tons more supplements and saunas and all the things. It's about protecting the field in which you live and thrive. Again, that link is lukestory.com/LeelaQ and the code is Luke10. So the thing I guess, always trying to find a balance with is acknowledging the darkness in the world, the darkness within my own self, as this is what's necessary for us to be able to come here and have this experience. In other words, if the world was any other way than what it is, it wouldn't be the same school. Like if this is a school, well, there needs to be challenges, right? There has to be really hard tests. I think that's the difficult thing for some of us on the spiritual path to accept, is that the spiritual path is probably the rockiest path. I think just going to Walmart, coming home, watching sitcoms, or football or whatever, just living a life where you're not paying attention to the greater reality, is probably easier in many ways than trying to wake up, because you wake up to everything. You're not just waking up to love and light and bliss. It's like you're waking up to the shadow within self, the collective shadow, the 10 people that control this world that are pretty much mostly nefarious, So it's like, wow, how do you take all of that in? So I don't know if there's a question in there, but like, how do you reconcile, I don't know, the duality, the contrast, the good and evil paradigm that we're in, and work your way through it with some optimism and trust that it's the way it's supposed to be?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, one of the things that I feel like we get hung up on is the story, whether it's our own story, whether it's the community story, the collective story, the civilization story. It's a story. And that's what we're so good at. We love telling stories to ourselves, to other people. But, in this film, I really wanted to kind of strip that away, and I wanted to look at it from a different angle. And I really wanted to focus on what could constitute reality if I took away the story. And one of the things that we really focus on this documentary is these relic geometry patterns in the universe. And according to some of the physicists that we talked to, and quantum physicists and different doctors, these relic geometries are what we download and then turn into a story. So at the root of it, it's just geometry. Okay, well, we kind of, we love that story, right? Because it's like sacred geometry. But the thing with geometries is they're not all sacred. You're downloading all sorts of, if this is true, right? If this is true, if the whole universe from the beginning of the Big Bang is relic geometry patterns that then has turned into consciousness experiences that you're downloading and turning into a story because of your beliefs. There's all sorts of geometry out there. It's not just beautiful patterns and connections. Yes, we have all of this in ancient sites because they wanted to make sure they were connected to something coherent, but you're downloading decoherent geometry patterns, and that's where you get this, not always love and light. You're having all these different feelings. Sometimes I think it's easier for people to visualize what their thoughts actually look like. If I'm having a decoherent thought, then you think about your decoherent thought as like an a strange geometry shape that's not coherent, versus a coherent thought. I am grateful. I'm in love. I love what I'm doing. I love myself. I'm so happy, right? Coherent, beautiful sacred geometry. But then there's all these other ones that are being downloaded. The gift of humanity is not to find love. We have this thing. We got to, it's all about love. We got to find love. Well, love feels so much better, but we have this gift. We are translating the very relic geometries that made all of this universe through our human bodies into our 3D experience. We have a lot of power. You always hear this, you're the director of your own movie. You're the writer of your own script. Well, that's exactly right. You're actually turning the universe into a story, and you get to do that. You have so much power. And it's really, if you think about this, if you strip away your experience and how you want to live a better life, just think about how proud the universe is that you're just translating anything, Okay, let's put this into a story, a human story. There's this universe. We have no idea who started it. We have no idea who pressed the button, and then it was like, boom, big bang. Everything now is here. Whoever that person is has created this world that you get to translate. And so it created all of the things that feel bad, as well as the things that feel good. And it wants to see what you're going to translate, right? So here it is, proud of you that you're translating anything. And you're thinking, well, now I'm a victim of this world and these people and this situation and all of that. And the universe is like, no, you've just decided to translate this really bad situation. That doesn't mean that you deserve it or any of that, That's just a story that then becomes your belief system and how you see the world and your perception. But if you think about that, if you just strip away the story and you think of that like, okay, yeah, I do have all this power. Those moments when you have all that anxiety and those feelings that are like, oh, if you could stop for a second and think, okay, well, the universe is proud of me because I'm translating some strange geometry shape that this creator, this architect decided to just make. But I kind of don't want to do that right now. I want to change that. I want to have a coherent experience at this moment in time. And so, I don't know. I like the idea of stripping away the story and just and like bringing it down to the bare bones of everything's just geometry. I think it allows for a deeper reflection on what's really happening instead of it being bad or good. Creating a dichotomy all the time. I mean, because we love that. Even storytelling and making movies, right?
Yeah.
Come up with a bad guy.
Yeah.
Because then there's a hero, right? And then we're on a hero's journey. And then somebody wins and somebody loses and we're all happy about that. We're like, yeah, yes.
Well, there can't be a hero without a villain.
Right, exactly.
It's like, imagine you have a film and everyone's the protagonist.
Oh my God.
Kind of boring, right? Everyone's just hanging out, cuddling, just living their best life, laying in a field of grass. It's like, wow, what a boring story. I guess that's the thing that I'm always trying to reconcile is you need the polarity to create energy, right?
Yeah.
It's like you need the positive and negative for propulsion. And there's a part of me that wants to live in a fantasy where there is no polarity. It's all just going toward the light,
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes life, I think, a lot easier to accept for me. And I'm able to be in a more allowing, surrendered state when I just kind of stop fighting what is. That there is obviously a reason this experience is designed this way, the video game of life. If it wasn't meant to be this way, it wouldn't be, it would be another way. So if this is the way it is, how do I navigate that? And another thing in your film too, that I think is really smart that you just kind of spoke to is like, there's zero dogma, right? There's no like even hint, well, this is the real path this way. It's kind of like getting down to the raw materials of this reality and the geometry and the numerology and the light and the frequencies and kind of everything that I guess you could say is kind of the substrate of what we experience as the material physical world. Let's bypass the story of the physical world and like get down to the nucleus of what life really is, which is really interesting. I think in a film, it's much easier to do that too than if you read a great book about it or you have a conversation about it. There were so many great visual representations of that in the film that, again, weren't attached to any kind of belief system. So it's easy to walk in, just with an open mind and be able to glean the message of infinite possibilities, right? So you don't have to like latch onto any one of those things. You're just seeing patterns that are all over the world, all across time, that certain groups of humans have tapped into different places and frequencies and have been able to work with energy in ways that, most of us don't understand now. Another thing that's really trippy to me is the number 12. And I was waiting for it in the film because there's a 12 here and here and here and here. It's just like, what is up with this number 12? What came to me also was the 12 steps. I was like, oh, she's got to mention the 12 steps. That's another one. It's just so like
many,
right?
Just like ran out of time.
What?
Like, how many creative ways can I talk about 12? And I'm like, yeah. And then we talk about the hero's journey, and I'm like, just plop that in there, and it just.
Well, for people that haven't seen the film yet, like, tell us what's up with the number 12. Like, what by the end of creating this film and speaking to all these brilliant people, what's the kind of synthesis that you've arrived at with the prevalence of that particular number?
So I've been writing a lot of these ancient civilization shows, and I also was like in the beginning of Ancient Aliens and like all this stuff that I've been writing and producing for a while. And one of the things that I kept just taking note of, because I'm all about patterns. I think as a journalist, clearly, right? Mm-hmm. I think to myself. I think as a journalist in this supernatural kind of space, so this, the unseen world, like the only thing you have to go on is patterns. Otherwise, I'm just making stuff up. I'm just saying, this is the way, like you were saying, this is this, and that. But patterns are the only thing I feel like. So throughout, I'd say about, 10, 15 years, I've been kind of just taking note. Oh, that's weird. That's 12. Oh, that's weird. That's 12 too, Oh. And, so what I started to notice first, because I'm writing all these episodes on different temples and religious stuff and spirituality, was that most spiritual text, religious text, talk about a very important story where there's 12 characters and there's a 13th in the middle, usually a prophet. Think of 12 apostles. Jesus is number 13. And this is in every religion, every spiritual text. There is the important story with this number. And I thought, and I remember bringing this up and people being like, so who cares? Like, what's the big deal about that? I'm like, I don't know, but it's just weird. Like, at some point, this book, this spiritual practice was built on the fact that somebody was able to control themselves, the way they look at the world. Maybe they were able downloading coherent geometry shapes. I don't know. But they were able to be in touch with God in such a profound way that they are giving you kind of like a blueprint for how to do that. And it didn't get anywhere, but I just kept going on that journey. So as I was gathering that stuff, I started to notice, okay, so we have 12 zodiac signs, and then 12 is also is part of 12 faces of a dodecahedron. A dodecahedron is a sacred geometry shape. Plato, there's the 5 platonic solids. The dodecahedron is considered ether, right? So this is everything that is the unseen world is this 12-face dodecahedron sacred geometry shape. So I thought, wow, this is a good starting point. This is a good, could this be a structure that we don't know how it functions in the universe? And that just set me on this whole course. And I started finding these anomalies. I started talking to people that were finding these kind of either 12 frequencies or 12 shaped dodecahedron shapes in the universe. So the idea was that this number, although just a number, could be these spiritual, religious, ancient understanding of how the universe worked. We started this conversation talking about how, why do we get so disconnected? We could have forgotten the actual shape of the universe And the ancients could have understood that, and they were able to access that ancient shape. And then they were able to create a reality inside of it, which would have been like the 13th point. That to me was so fascinating. I think story, we're talking about how we create these stories, but the human story is so important. And it doesn't matter what you believe, and it doesn't matter what you believe in. Religious and spiritual texts tell a lot about people and how those humans were translating the universe. And what happens is we get so caught up on that one story. I only believe this Tibetan text. I only believe the Bible. I only believe in this. But the thing in every single one of them is explaining the same story from a different point of view. And we need all those different point of views so that we can all arrive at the same location. And what I'm suggesting is that each of these religious and spiritual texts took a form, or if you want to like make an analogy, they took a note. And each of these different veins of how to explain God are different notes in the musical system. How many notes are in the musical system? 12, right? Just keep going. We could be here all day. We'll be here for 5 hours to talk about 12.
Yeah.
And like every time I say this, everyone's like, okay, well, that's cool. But what about the demiurge? And I'm like, okay, but let's go back to the 12. There's a structure. There's things inside the structure. So if you know how, one of my biggest goals is to figure out how the universe works, not to solve everything in it. But if we could just figure out how it works, then we are able to actually access it instead of just being this confused soul walking around trying to figure out what our purpose is. And from my research, it feels that there is a structure. You could call that the matrix, but we live in a structure. That structure has certain amounts of points and frequencies. And if we understand that, then we're able to collectively change outcomes and what we're doing here.
Another interesting thing that I'm sure you have experience with more so than I as just kind of a casual observer is when it comes to, see, these ancient sites all over the world, the pyramids, different things that we can't explain, with these certain geometric patterns and shapes, symbols, sounds, things that create sounds, instruments. You have all these people that were supposedly completely isolated from one another, right?
Yeah.
And yet during, like I'm sure vast swaths of time, but, relatively speaking, zooming out within kind of a short period of time in terms of the age of the universe, all these different people that didn't know one another are kind of doing the same thing, to your point of all these different religions and belief systems. Mm-hmm. It's like everyone essentially is doing the same thing at the same time without direct interaction with one another. It's kind of like the 100th monkey principle, right? It's like, boom, all of a sudden you have one in South America, Egypt, India, all these different cultures and traditions are kind of pointing at the same thing, but they're not being informed by one another. So what are they being informed by?
Yeah.
Right? They're tapping into some sort of universal intelligence and kind of the mathematics of the universe in a way that's really interesting. What have been some of the parallels, I guess, in terms of sacred sites that have been most interesting to you in that regard? That like these guys over here are doing the same thing as these guys over here. How the hell did they all arrive at the same kind of conclusion, even though they're taking a different route to get there?
I totally agree with the principle. They were definitely connected with something bigger. We always like to logically think that, they were in communication together. But one of the things that Matthias talks about in the documentary and, he talks about in his own work is this idea that each civilization, although separate, kind of knew what their, I'm going to make a musical analogy again, kind of what their tone was in the universe. And so there's this universal knowledge that everybody knew. Now, if we go back to the beginning of this interview where we talked about, how do they know all this stuff? Well, if they were connected to the universe, that means everybody has the same laws and principles of how the universe works. So they got that down. Then they added all of their different kinds of gods and goddesses and their understanding of how they're, what's happening in the universe, which is a little bit still similar across all the different civilizations, but personal to what they're experiencing, where they live, and what kind of animals they have. But the thing to me that was really fascinating is every one of these civilizations has a temple that's connected to the winter, summer solstice. And definitely some of them are specific for eclipses. And this was really fascinating to me because I'm like, okay, well, why were every civilization has at least one temple that's connected to the winter solstice and the summer solstice? Why? Could these temples, although maybe not communicating, but all in touch with the universal structure, have been configuring their piece for the right time for when it's supposed to be activated? And they all knew this. So they made sure that at least one of their temples in their civilization was activated at that winter and summer solstice, as if everybody was coming online at the same time to activate their tone. With their instruments, with their beat, right? Their expression, all at the same time. You could say, well, they're really excited about that one alignment. I'm like, they put a lot of work into those summer and winter.
Thousands of years building a structure that we can't even build today.
Exactly.
Oh, just for the hell of it.
Exactly.
Thank you for reminding me of the kind of the theme of music, right? Mm-hmm. So as you're describing that, it's like, okay, there's a conductor out there. We would just call the Godhead, consciousness, God, right? And it's like, so you have people all over the world at the same time kind of doing the same things with the same rhythm according to what's happening in the cosmos, right? So it's like they didn't need to interface with one another because they're all following the same conductor. This guy's like playing the tuba over here. This one's on the mandolin. This one's on the conga drum, right? And it's like, okay, they're all playing a different instrument, but there's some guiding principle. There's some guiding law or force that they seem to have been able to tap in. So when you're looking at it kind of in a linear way, it looks like they were all following one another or informing one another, but they're tapped into the conductor that's up here who's kind of like orchestrating the music. I like that model. That makes a lot of sense, I think, because I play some music. So it's like kind of understand how, harmony and chords and rhythms and meter and things like that work. There's like this silent music going on all the time. Maybe that's what the ether is. The ether's like a guitar string. It's like a carrier wave, right? And these guys over here in Egypt and these guys in Peru are going ding. They hear that note and they tap into that note, and all of a sudden they're doing their own thing that, even though it appears to be done in isolation, it's being guided by a universal sort of frequency.
Yeah, I mean, just think about well, you brought up, think like with an orchestra. I mean, some of them are playing at the same time, but some of them are waiting for the right moment to like, okay, now it's my turn, or now it's my turn, or it's because it's a song, right?
Yeah.
And although I just want, if you could just visualize the sun on the summer solstice coming across the planet, and then like a musical box, like ding, 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 right? All these different temples being lit up at that very moment when it's the summer solstice hits, right? And it creating this musical song. And you think about all those ancient civilizations that were kind of activating that temple. There's vibrations, and there's, everyone's talking about frequency now. I mean, if everybody's talking about frequency, but if you think about frequency, like relic frequencies in the universe, at its lowest point is sound that we can hear. So if you think about the alignment of an ancient frequency into a temple, and then you're adding the music and the sound that then activates the human body, you've got something really beautiful, because you have something that is unseen happening to you, and and the human race. And then you have this beautiful actual sound, this music that we're making. And we know in all these temples that they were definitely using either voices or instruments of some sort. So the celebration of this connection to the ancient structure is our ability to use our voice to even if you're tone deaf, your voice just speaking is part of the harmony or disharmony of the universe itself. We look at these ancient sites and we feel so disconnected from it, like, whoa, it's so cool, but it's, if you think about what we were talking about with these ancient civilizations, maybe not communicating with each other directly, they just didn't need proof of it.
Right. They're communicating on a different channel.
Yeah, and just think about it. So if all of this is true, then there's other beings in other dimensions of time space, all existing again, all at once. And can you imagine if all the human race was at this one moment in time? Well, just 12,000 years ago or whenever this happened, we get through that, all the summer solstice or the winter solstice, the music box plays the song, and then it's silent. And the amount of communication those humans must have had with interdimensional beings or other things that weren't human, and to say hello. I mean, look how hard it is for us to even have the conversation. I mean, it's getting better now, talking about aliens and otherworldly beings. But God, that must have been so beautiful to be in communication with all that exists all the time. And not feeling so lonely here as
totally.
We're here on this rock floating through space.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I think is really easy to grasp when you get, say you live in a city and you get out in the middle of nowhere in nature. Like the silence is confronting at first, you know what I mean? It's like, where's my phone? Like, where, I mean, that happens to me. It takes a minute to kind of detox from the stimulation and just the overload of information and noise. My favorite example of that is leaf blowers. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
oh my God, leaf blowers.
Just a community service announcement for entrepreneurs out there. If anyone could invent a silent leaf blower, you are going to be the richest human ever. I will invest everything I own into you. I mean, we did it with cars, right? My wife's car is like silent. You don't even hear it coming.
Don't they have electric leaf blowers?
I mean,
or am I just making that up in my mind?
I hope so. They should.
They need to have a Prius leaf blower.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
My husband and I moved. We just sold our house in New York, and we moved to Santa Fe in January. And one of my biggest things with the leaf blowers were out of control because they didn't time it out. So everybody had a leaf blower going all the time. It's
kind of like that around here. Yeah. It's funny because I'll like be annoyed at my neighbors having a leaf blower, but then like when our gardener comes, it's annoying, but I'm like, I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? But I've had this fantasy too. It's like, wow, if I was really wealthy, I would pay someone extra to just gently rake. You know what I mean? It's like a picture like old world Japan, right? Where they have like these little like straw brooms and everything's super zen and quiet yet tidy. I want a zen garden that's silent. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah. So you're inundated with all of this stimuli, all of this noise, right? I mean, not to mention like invisible noise, EMF and all this, and you get out into nature, and it's funny to me that is, at least for a time, for some of us, uncomfortable when that's actually the natural state. But then as you start to see it through and you spend a little more time and you're not being inundated with all of this static, you can feel your intuition start to come online, right? You start looking at trees differently. All of a sudden you start noticing the subtleties and the nuance of the natural environment in which you are. And if you stay there long enough, you start to get the sense that you're not just an observer or a witness of the phenomenon of nature. You start to actually integrate with it and have the understanding that you're a part of it, right? That there is no separation between you and that. But that takes, because I think we're so conditioned in this kind of linear, overstimulated way of experiencing the world, that it takes some time and some work to get there, which is weird because that's our natural state, right, is to be sitting next to a river and not feel apart from it. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm a human sitting on the bank of this river. I'm observing it. It's like, no, you are the river is the reality.
Yeah.
You know, to your point in the film of illusion, you know, so much of this is just because we've been conditioned to think and feel in certain ways. The more conditioned we become, the more separation is created. So it's like we have this thing called recreation. Like there's recreational areas, which is always a funny word to me. What are we recreating? We're recreating something that's already there. It's just we've divorced ourselves from it, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's so much power in silence. I guess that's when you get to a place of emptiness and quiet, it makes room for things to come through. So as you speak of these ancient peoples, I mean, no wonder they were able to tap into these celestial kind of time frames and schedules and be so aligned with that because there wasn't so much noise distracting them from that.
Yeah. Yeah. They were able to really listen. Um, my husband and I moved outside town now. So, we were in the city. Now we're, like you said, it was a little jarring at first. So we're like, I got to turn on all my noise machines.
Yeah, totally.
Do we have a leaf blower noise machine? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody will always say, well, what do you do out there? And I'm like, well, I work, but nothing. I mean, not nothing, but you're right. Like it took a little bit, but it's where you walk out and you feel like the trees on your property are not just part of you, but you're communicating with them, and you're knowing when they need water, not because you're checking them with machinery or technology, but you're like, oh, you need water, and there's something wrong with your leaves, and
Mm-hmm.
the amount of information, like you said, the ancient people must have been able to absorb. I mean, I think they just found like another preserved body from I don't know, 10,000 years ago, and the caveman had all these different mushrooms. He had one for that was psychedelic, one for probiotics for his gut, and another one like lion's mane or something like that, health.
Yeah.
And you're thinking like, well, how did he know that? So he went in the forest and picked these specific things that we go to health conferences to learn about.
Yeah,
He was just like,
he's the
that's lion's mane. I need that.
Neanderthal biohacker.
He was. Exactly. But I can't even imagine how you get in touch with that. Like, how do you know that? I mean, maybe somebody taught you, but I mean, you eat the wrong mushroom, you could be dead soon. So how were they able to be in touch with knowing all these different things? I mean, I think that's just if I think we're at this place now where technology is really kind of taking over our human existence. And we can't get away from it. AI is part of everything that we do, but what's our human part of that? And so there's also this desire at the same time that, AI and technology is booming. There's also this desire to be like, well, what else is there for my human body to experience? And I think there's those two dichotomies, like, well, how do we still preserve or experience nature? And I really hope that we kind of return back to that in some way. I think we're at this precipice now where we can't necessarily not use technology, but how can we separate technology from our human biological technology that's connected to something much bigger and trust that? How do we get there? That's so important to me, even on my personal journey. Mm-hmm. How do I really trust my human biological system and enjoy it? Because our technology is way more advanced than we ever think it is. And that's what gets us in trouble when we're using technology to sort of help what we're thinking is our, something that's our weakness. But our emotions are not our weakness. We have this whole thing where we're like, well, what we were talking about. We have to be happy. But our emotions are so important. They're part of our human technology. And we really try to bypass that with technology. We're at this really key point where understanding that we could have everything the ancients were in touch with if we just trust our systems, our humanness.
Yeah.
Instead of trusting just the AI. We could still use the AI and the technology, but still being that we are superior in our own technology.
We all want to feel youthful and look good as we age. That's why everyone and their mom is talking about collagen right now. Well, unfortunately, most collagen products are basically glorified protein powder that don't really deliver on their promise. That's why Carrera Marine Collagen from Peak caught my attention. Unlike the other formulas that focus on just one type of collagen, Carrera combines multiple forms for a synergistic longevity effect that you can see and feel. You've got type 1 marine collagen for skin radiance and smoothness, plus a rare type 2 for deeper joint and connective tissue support. And then they went next level and added biotin and micronized pearl powder to boost skin, hair, and nails. For the past week, I've been whipping 2 scoops into my morning brew, and it turns into a creamy longevity latte without any weird taste or annoying clumping. And I noticed it right away, too. Better skin texture, more hydration, and my joints don't complain like they used to. Now this is legit my #1 favorite protein. There's just nothing like it out there. To get loaded up, here's what you do. Go to peaklife.com/Luke to get 15% off when you subscribe. Plus, get a free gift during their launch period. That's peaklife.com/Luke. peaklife.com/Luke. And their Carrera protein's been clinically shown to support skin elasticity and joint agility after just 2 weeks of use. So you're not just enhancing your appearance, you're investing in your future self. peakt.com/Luke. Yeah, creating space. I'm always fascinated by the downloads and insights that are available when I just turn off the world in any kind of meditation or something like that, right? Or plant medicine experience. It's like when the noise is cleared out, call it technology, call it just too much data, right? It's like when you shut down the data, the paradox there is data that is actually useful and relevant and directive in terms of something you can integrate and take and run with. Those seem to come when there's space created for it. And if the space isn't created, then it's just like the inertia of life takes over, and next thing you know, you're kind of living like a robot. You know what I mean? It's like I catch myself some days. It's like, oh, wake up, pick up the phone, and it's like, what am I doing? Wait, what? What am I doing? I'm the one that's in charge of this shit. You know, why am I letting all these outside inputs kind of dictate how I feel or what I'm thinking or what I'm doing? Mm-hmm. But unless we take the like dedicated, deliberate, intentional time to make space, we don't have access to all of that wisdom, that kind of universal intelligence that's floating around all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you got to tune your channel, tune your little radio set to the channel that has the least static in order for the true music to come through, right? Or maybe you get lucky and boom, you tap into a certain frequency, that's really beautiful music that you can kind of align your life to. In your travels around the world and, meeting all the interesting people that you have, what evidence have you seen of these ancient cultures using psychedelics? You mentioned the guy that they unearthed and he had a little psilocybin mushroom or something like that. I have a sense that people have been tripping as long as there have been people. But, time kind of destroys the evidence, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
In rare cases.
100% agree with you. We always think that like we're at some other point where, we have it different or, no, humans have been humans for a really long time. It doesn't been who you talk to. They've been here for 100,000 years, 250,000 years, 40,000 years. Humans have been doing the same stuff. They have the same relationships. They like talk about the same stories with each other. And they've definitely been tripping since the beginning because they're probably in the same boat that anybody else is. I kind of want to see something else. Like, is this it? I just kind of want to go out a little bit further and see what else I can get connected to. I mean, every culture, every civilization has a different modality for how to do that, given the plants they have that grow there. Mm-hmm. Every single one. And it becomes part of their ceremonies, their religious ceremonies. Sometimes given to people that were the shamans, the seers, the priests, the priestesses, the ones that were the oracles, if you will. Like, they would go and have those experiences and come back to the village and say, okay, this is what I saw. And I think that, as we're talking about how these ancient people were more connected, they still are human. So they're still living in stories. So the idea was, even though we're connected, how do we create something bigger, right? And then leave this plane, be able to look down at it, have a new idea, come back to the village. This is what I think we should do. I think we should move over here. I think we should connect this way. Yeah, 100%. I think the human experience is difficult, but beautiful. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I tend to think that limitations are frustrating, and you could argue that they cause suffering. But our human limitations are also really beautiful. I always like to think of the perspective of if I'm like my guides or an otherworldly being, and I'm looking down at me trying to do whatever I'm doing, right? Manifest stuff, make movies. I would be like, oh man, that looks so cool. Because if you're in these other dimensions and you can just go like that and you have it, it's just not as exciting as the amount of work it takes with your limitations to make something happen. I mean, you might get a little bit of gratification and then you might say, God, I wish it wasn't that hard. But these other beings looking down at us might be like, oh, wow, that's so awesome. And we got to look at that as a gift, because you were just talking about this, without the limitations, we don't have a boundary for what we're actually creating and what we're bringing into this world. And the amount of energy it takes to burst something into 3D reality is immense. Other realities, they have more modalities to be able to see things from different angles. We only have 3. So as much as, look, we're all human. You and I are having conversations. We have our own suffering. But as much as our limitations feel like suffering, they could actually be, if you look at it from that perspective, they could actually be quite a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know in my own life, the biggest growth spurts have come from pain. It's like when you're in that period of pain, you want anything but that. But, if you have the fortitude and kind of, I don't know, inner will, spiritual will, maybe to move past it and to persevere, I think most of us would agree that on the other side of any challenging period in life, we're better because of it. I mean, the shit that I put myself through, this is terrible. I mean, so much stupidity and folly, but like I got beat up a little bit and am definitely wiser as a result of that. Sometimes I think it must be really boring to incarnate and have a karma that is really smooth, I mean, I know people like that, they had a healthy family, their parents were loving, they're smart, talented, successful. They seem to just kind of have a free ride, and I think, oh, that must be nice. But how many lifetimes did they have to beat their head against the wall in order to arrive at this one where they had a relatively, bump-free ride, so to speak? I think the bumps are valuable if you can frame them that way.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I don't talk about in this, but I kind of tried to give a different perspective, is that again, which is a really great story, and I get myself wrapped up in this too, is that, I'm suffering because I've had some bad karma, right? I did something. This person hates me because in a past life I chopped their head off or whatever. But there's a gentleman in my movie that I interview. If you remember, he got kind of knocked into a higher state of consciousness.
That was my favorite part. I was like, just make a movie about that dude.
He's amazing.
We need the deleted scenes. I want to see like all that guy's shit. Yeah, he was amazing.
Yeah, he's
explain that for people that haven't seen the film, because it's so wild.
So I interview this doctor who's been working on these components in our brain, or in the cells in our brain, that are able to download these relic geometries. And at the end of the interview, he says, look, I've been studying this guy who I think his brain has transitioned into a higher state permanently. So not something that, we trip and go somewhere, but like is there all the time. So, when you're having like a psychedelic experience and everything turns into fractals, this is what this guy sees all the time.
Yeah,
he wakes up, everything's fractals. Water's fractals, the way someone smells is a fractal, like everything's fractals. He says, you should interview this guy. So I interview him. He has a really interesting story. And what I love about his story is he was a normal guy, furniture salesman, liked to drink a lot, went to a karaoke bar, got in an argument with somebody. They beat him almost to death. And he was rescued, brought to the hospital, but his brain had this trauma and he was knocked into this higher state of consciousness. So he was having that moment like some of us have had when we're in a psychedelic experience, where it's everything all at once, all the time. And, but forever, not just 8 hours. And, obviously it took a while for him to calm down, to be able to function in normal life. Again, just to say, limitations sometimes are good because you don't want that all the time. But he was able to transition himself and function on a daily level. Slowly, he trained himself to be able to see things and understand them and create his own perception of reality. But what this higher state did was made him into this mathematical savant. So he then was able to calculate what he was seeing by his brain would traverse it into a mathematical calculation. So one of the things that I say to him, I'm like, oh, so I'm just like this geometry, cymatic pattern. Like what? He's like, yeah. The way you smell, the way you talk, the color of your shirt, everything is just a bunch of geometry on top of each other. But he's gotten so good that he can actually see. He's like, okay, that's lilac, right? By a geometry pattern, or that's green by a geometry pattern. That's water by the way the fractals are. That's bad water versus good, insane. We could talk to that guy, like you said, we could talk to this guy for like ever. So what he offers in this piece is that if we are downloading, if everything, reality around us is just geometry patterns, this guy is living proof that is truth. Like he says, when you look at a house, you see a house. I see geometry. That's all I see. And I see all these different geometry patterns. And he's like, he says in the movie, he says in our movie, that in the movie The Matrix, when she says there is no spoon, that's correct. There is no spoon. There is only geometry and electromagnetic energy interacting with each other to create a pattern that then your brain perceives as a spoon, because collectively we have created that's a spoon.
Yeah.
So collective consciousness is just 51% of the population. Common sense, right? 51% of the population believes one thing. If we decided that wasn't a spoon, because here's another thing that I couldn't make the documentary because, again, there's just too much stuff. Every language, so let's say spoon in every single language across the world, has the same vibrational pattern, even though it sounds completely different. Tree in every single language has the same vibrational pattern. And he's like, if you say in Russian to me, tree, I know what you're saying based on the geometry pattern because it's the same.
Whoa.
And we think it's separate, but the origin of where it exists in the universe is the exact same. So oak tree is different than a pine tree. It's a different geometry pattern. But pine tree in Russian and Spanish and English, the actual geometry pattern is the same.
Wow. That's
But
bananas.
we create separation for context.
Right.
But
Right.
its origin point is the exact same.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that man's story is really interesting. It reminded me of, I wish I could remember her name. I believe she has a book or two, but there was a woman I heard interviewed some time ago who had some sort of traumatic brain injury or a stroke or something to where her left hemisphere kind of just went offline, and so she lives predominantly in the right hemisphere of the brain. So she's basically enlightened, like what we would consider, an enlightened master, in the sense that they're, tapped into the greater reality in a way that your average person isn't. But her story, much like his, is interesting because it wasn't something she aspired to do, right? It was like something that just happened to her. Again, something you say, oh, that's so terrible. She had the stroke or the accident. It's like, well, really? Because she lives in a state of complete bliss 24/7 because she doesn't have the analytical kind of linear mind ruining her experience like it does for so many of us. Those kind of cases are really interesting. Same with, these, I had a woman on, Kai Dickens, the telepathy tapes. I don't know if you've heard that podcast, right? Fascinating series where, she's discovering all of these nonverbal autistic kids are totally psychic and go and travel in other dimensions and have all these abilities that seem to be unique to them. But I guess she and, the premise of her show and her work is that we all have these capacities. They're just latent, right? And somebody has a TBI or they have, they're on the spectrum or whatever the case is. It's like they're just able to tune into something that's there all the time for all of us. And many of us just have to really work really hard to get there, So I think
we're all like training to remote view. And these kids are meeting up on a hill.
Yeah, exactly.
All of them at the same time without communicating. I mean,
it's really encouraging, to think like, oh, wow. So that's, it's not something we have to really aspire to attain. It's more something we just have to kind of allow and acknowledge and create space for. We all have these powers. We just don't know it. I think that toward the end of your film, that was something I got too, where I was checking myself a little like, you could work on that. But also like, oh yeah, wait. Like I'm the architect of my reality here, and not in a new agey kind of platitude, but in like capital R reality, it really is what I make it, which I think is so important. Like I have those capacities. It happens all the time with my wife. Like we were in the car the other day, I forget what the word was, but we're observing something outside the car. And I was about to say something to her, a certain word, and then like before I could get it out of my mouth, she said it. And it was like I was reading her mind, it was like a telepathic thing. And I think that happens when we're around someone a lot, you kind of just get in sync. But it was another reminder like, oh, I could be doing that all the time. You know what I mean? I just don't know that I can, therefore I'm not.
Or you don't trust it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, most of us are getting hits on stuff all the time, but we're like, oh, I'm just that's just me, or that's just because I ate beets yesterday. You know what I mean? Like we come up with all sorts of weird stuff of why, but I think we're getting hits all the time. And one of the things that the doctor who introduced me to the man we were just talking about.
What's the man's name?
Dr. Stuart Amaroff?
No, the guy.
Jason Padgett.
Jason Padgett. Okay.
Yeah. He's Dr. Stuart Amaroff was really working on how and why. And of course, I can only put a little bit of this into the documentary because there's just so much, especially with him, because it was like complicated. But so we have these things that are called microtubules, and they're in all of our cells in our brain. And there's 13 of them connected together, connected together that are these little receivers. And these things are connected to God, the universe, all the time. And the idea is that people that are more in tune, or for Jason's sake, they have more of those open all the time. So all of this information is coming in. So if you think about, there's 13 of these cylindrical things that together that make up this kind of tubing that are in your cells, that are the receptors. If you have one of those open, you're not really getting a lot of information. But the thing is, you're always connected. There's not a moment where you're disconnected. It's just how many of those are open to receive all this information. And so a lot of us, maybe on this the people that are listening to your podcast, are meditating or doing work to open up those things. You'll notice that you'll get a lot more information because they're staying open longer. It's not just when you're in a psychedelic experience or you're in a deep meditation. Now you've kind of trained your brain, your system, that maybe these microtubules to stay open longer. So, but you have somebody like Jason, he's probably got all 13 of them open and he's taking in all the information all the time, which is a lot. So when you're having supernatural experiences, whether it's induced by hallucinogenics or you just happen to be in a temple and something happens to you, those are blown wide open, or a significant amount of them, and a bunch of information is coming in and then it closes. So sometimes when people go to a retreat and they have this mind-blowing experience and they feel like change, and then it lasts like 2 weeks, and then you're like, oh, back to my mindset. You have a moment where those microtubules are starting to close again. So I think a lot of our work, when we do all these big expansive things, where we're going to a retreat or hallucinogenics or medicine, the idea is to figure out a modality to keep it open as long, maybe not all 13.
Yeah.
But just enough so
like
that
Jason is walking around just tripping balls 24/7. When he was talking, it's because I've had those experiences with psychedelics. I totally could understand what he was talking about, right? You're out in the forest on a bunch of mushrooms and you go like, oh, wow, these trees are totally breathing and like everything is alive and conscious. That's the experience that I've had. And of course, all the patterns and things like that. But as he was describing that, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that. But can you imagine just having to deal with life like that?
No.
It's like, how do you integrate that when you're that open all the time?
Yeah.
It's also kind of, I've found over the years, as I've become kind of more receptive and sensitive to those energies, I also have had to become much more kind of guarded and insulated. Like I find that the world and certain people are just kind of overstimulating. It's kind of jarring.
Yeah.
I used to be like a very social person, extrovert, just out doing stuff with all the people all the time. And I find like as those have opened up for me a bit more, it's like I've become a little more, I don't know, protective might be strong, just, a little more reserved in my energy and a bit more discerning about the kind of media I take in or the people that I spend time with, places that I go. Those sensitivities are kind of hard to turn off once you start really turning them on, So I can imagine a guy like Jason, it's like, whoa, I feel like I'm sensitive to sound and light and things and people. It's like, dude, how does that guy walk out of the house without just being completely overwhelmed?
I don't know. I know sometimes, it was really intense to have a camera crew there at his house.
Intense for him.
Yeah. But he did a really good job. So I don't know. He must have really done some major training to be like, okay, I know it's all there, but did you ever do that where you're like you're in a haunted house and you're like, did you ever have that where you're like in a hotel room and you just feel like there's something there, or you stayed at an old place and you're like, look, I know you're there, I just need to go to sleep tonight, okay? So I need you not to bother me. I can't help you go to the other side. You got to find someone else for that.
Right.
I feel like that's what Jason's doing like 24/7. He's just kind of like, I know all of this is happening, but I'm just going to focus right here.
Totally.
On these geometry shapes.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to play along with the agreement, the collective agreement of reality, right? Like if you're the only one in a room that's kind of experiencing it that way, I imagine there's a certain kind of, you have to have an understanding within yourself that you're alone in that experience, right?
Yeah.
It's probably kind of difficult in that way too. It's not like you can go like create a friend group where everyone's on that same wavelength, because it's such a rare kind of ability.
I don't think he feels alone though. He's honestly really a happy person. So maybe there's a component of that where, at first it was like, what's happening? But then it's kind of like, well, it's all happening. It's weird. He's not upset. He's kind of enjoying it. And he gets so excited about the mathematical calculations, which I can't necessarily understand. I try to put some of that in there, his idea where consciousness lives and how when we are born into this 3D reality as humans, we pick all these different frequencies. He calls them light clocks. So if you think of like a clock, and it's kind of a cool visual if you think about this. So like every single piece of you, so Jason sees only geometry. So you have a pink sweater on, right? So that's like one geometry shape. And then the color of your hair and the thoughts that you have and your genes and who you are and where you've been. Oh, it's all geometry, like all messed up in there. But so he says that when you are separated from the one into your human body, into this 3D experience, these things he calls light clocks, which are different frequency bands, are actually programming your existence coming in. And then when you do self-care or work on yourself, you're going back in and reprogramming those. So you come in with a program and you can go in and change it. But they're just these frequency bands. And so for anybody listening, if you're just thinking about it, if you think about everything that constitutes you individually, that separates you from other people, is just a clock with like a different angle, a different number on that clock scale. So you just think of your different angular frequency.
Wow.
That's everything that makes up you. And so when you go in and you have miraculous healings, or you're able to change pieces of your personality or components of your belief systems, that's all you're doing. You're just changing the angle.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I spent a lot of my life stuck in survival mode. Years of trauma, addiction, and general chaos left my nervous system never truly feeling safe. And even after I got my act together, there was still part of me that always felt on guard and bracing for impact. And that's why I connected so deeply with Lotus Way. Lotus Way makes these solar infusions that carry the energetic imprint of specific flowers, all designed to support your nervous system in a subtle but really powerful way. I started using their flower essences during a big life transition, and they've definitely helped me stay grounded, open, and less reactive. And now Lotus Way has created something special called Warriors of the Unseen Truth. It's a program for veterans, first responders, and anyone still carrying the invisible burden of trauma. Now, even if that's not you, you probably know someone who's still trying to find their way back to themselves. To help them or yourself out, visit lukestory.com/warriors to learn more, and use the code Luke to save 10% off your first order. So whether it came from combat, childhood, or just the drama of modern life, a lot of us are carrying a weight our bodies never learned to put down. And Lotus Way offers beautiful tools to help you find your way back to center. Check it out at lukestory.com/warriors. Code Luke will save you that 10%. Okay, last thing I want to ask you. Well, there's going to be one more question after this.
Okay.
But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your perspective or experience with extraterrestrials, UFOs, UAPs. What have you seen in all of the films you've created in all of your travels that is the most impressive evidence?
Whew. All right. So I gotta be honest with you. I don't know how I got dropped into the UFO UAP space. I became like Discovery's UFO girl for like a while. I don't know how they found me, but they're like, I think it's because I produced Ancient Aliens for a long time, but and I don't have like dreads or anything, so they're like, she's like a journalist, she's perfect. Right. She looks credible.
Right.
Yeah, so I
you didn't walk in speaking light languages.
I also did light language. They just were like, okay, she's
smelling like patchouli.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, they were just like, okay, she looks pretty solid on camera, we'll put her in. I was always interested in it, but I think my biggest interest was like, well, what's the big structure of the universe? How do we understand this construct we live in? It's always been my thing. So here, for the moment in time, I would say a good 5 years, I've dropped into this like UFO alien world, and it's funny, every time I get interviewed about this, someone says, did you have an experience? Did they land in your yard when you were younger? I'm like, nope, haven't been abducted. My family's pretty open-minded. We've been talking about things like aliens since I was a little kid, so it wasn't weird for me. Fascinating world, by the way, because there is speaking of patterns, there's so much evidence before social media of people having so many encounters. And we only started collecting data since the late 1940s with Roswell. And in the 50s, they started data collecting services by the government that then got turned into private sectors. So people have been, gathering research on different people having these experiences, and they were all the same. Abduction stories are all the same. Light, they see a light. There's beings that come down. They're in their bed. They have paralysis. They get taken up. This is before anybody was communicating to other people what they were. So that to me was a amazing pattern throughout all the world, not just one area, all these people having the same experience. What is happening to these people? Now, something else that's really interesting in this world is that throughout the documentation of these different UAPs and UFOs, the actual shape of the craft has changed. So in the 50s, Roswell, late 40s, 50s, we have round UFO saucers. Mm-hmm. Then we move into the 60s, and we have the triangle-shaped crafts. And then we move 70s, 80s, and we have those cigar-shaped crafts that we see more often. And then these kind of like airships that we reported. I've covered so many cases. And then we get into the 2000s, and especially the later 2000s, and we're dealing with these kind of geometry, kind of multi-dimensional plasma kind of ships, if you will, that interact with your consciousness. And I thought that was really strange. So is it our consciousness that is only allowing us to see what the actual craft or being looks like? And only at that point we would, saucers were it. And then it was triangles. And then it was the cigar shape, right?
Interesting.
And now we're at these plasma ones. Do we have new aliens visiting us? Or are we just able to see what it actually is? Some kind of interdimensional craft. It was never a triangle. It was always an interdimensional craft. But our consciousness just couldn't fathom that. But now, that makes a little bit more sense.
There's the story that reminds me of that. And I don't know if this is true, but there is this indigenous native tribe, let's just say it's in South America, right? And the ships from Spain, are coming toward the coast, and the native peoples couldn't see the ships coming because they couldn't conceive of the existence of a ship because they'd never seen one, right? That kind of thing. And I don't know if that's true. I'm probably getting the story wrong, but it was something to that effect, and was meaningful enough to me that I at least remembered that part, just the principle of that, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, Jason, for example, that we were talking about, he's seeing things that we can't see in our normal waking state. And I've had that experience where, I don't know, not so much with, I guess kind of with ayahuasca, with what we might call entities. And it wasn't like they came from somewhere else and were coming to visit me in ceremony. It's like all of a sudden a switch got turned on and I could interact with them in a way that it was so obvious to me that they're always there, but I just can't see them. So therefore I don't believe in them or I don't interact with them. And it's kind of like those ships coming to shore. The natives had never seen them. So that they were able to be conquered basically because they were like in a cloak of invisibility, right? You know how like some of the UAPs are said to have like cloaks of invisibility where they come like in and out of this kind of reality or the visible light spectrum. It's that kind of thing. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense, that as we've evolved and our perception has opened up, it's maybe the things haven't changed, but the way we're seeing the things makes them change.
Yeah.
That kind of the
Yeah,
theory?
yeah. Like it's the new thing now that they're all interacting with their consciousness. I'm like, no, they're interacting with their consciousness all the time. And if you think about the people that did have the experiences, those people were open already. That they were already privy to being able to see something, but their brain just was transmuting it to these shapes that they're used to seeing.
Right.
Yeah, I noticed that also there's a really interesting study that was done by, oh my God, I'm just forgetting his name, from Stanford. It's going to come to me, of course, after this interview or something. He started doing these studies on what happens to people, like what could there be an anomaly in people's brains that have had these experiences, whether it was an abduction or they see things or they have repeated crafts they see in the sky or something like that. And he found that there was a part of their brain that was more active, and I can't remember which part of it was, but it was more active than other parts of the brain, and it was the same in every single person that had had an alien or a craft experience, every single one. So there's a component in the brain that he was saying allows for these people to have an experience. And of course, that brings us back to, well, does that mean it's already here? You know, it's like we're finally getting to that point in this UFO UAP situation where people are not necessarily, or things are not necessarily visiting us. They're just here. They're like right next to us.
Right. Right.
And they're waiting for us to say, "Oh, I see you."
Another interesting thing about that phenomenon is when it comes to the overarching position of government and institutions, it seems that they view that phenomena always from a place of it being a threat, like national security, da da da. It's like the people that have had the experiences, and you've met many more of them than I have, their perspective seems to be that these are benevolent helpers that in some way are kind of trying to prevent us from creating, catastrophic nuclear wars and things that would lead to our demise, that they're kind of like, Big Brother who's silently kind of nudging us toward a positive outcome. Whereas the government is more like, oh, they're going to come here and, harm us or something like that. And I've always thought, well, if you have these advanced beings that are able to kind of go interdimensional and come in and out of this reality and do whatever they're doing, if they wanted to harm humanity, they probably would have already done it, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yet at the same time, I would imagine that there are probably malevolent and benevolent beings, just like there are in the Earth plane, right? You have Adolf Hitler and you have, Gandhi, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
right.
So maybe some of them are kind of have our best interest at heart and some don't. But have you noticed that kind of the institutional side tends to view them more negatively, whereas people with direct subjective experience tend to view them more positively? Am I just imagining that as someone sitting in the bleachers, or?
No. You're totally right by that. So one of the theories that I was kind of toying with, because I always wondered if a lot of the people that have had these kind of traumatic abduction experiences, I mean, they're taken out of their will. It seems traumatic, whether they're poked or their blood's taken or, all of this stuff. I always wondered, was it a Stockholm syndrome thing where they were like, it's a positive thing and I've been chosen to give this message. You hear that all the time. I'm supposed to tell people that we need to stop fighting, and they always have a message. Mm-hmm. And I always thought, well, yeah, I wonder if it's Stockholm syndrome, because that was so traumatic. It had to be a good thing, right? I'm not saying that I believe that that's what's happening to why it's a positive experience for those people. Maybe for some, because it's so difficult to explain. But I think that there is, of course, there's benevolent and malevolent. And I think it really comes down to know thyself. Like, who are you? Who are you dealing with? If we're always looking for something out there to save us or give us advice, we're going to be in big trouble. But going back to what you were talking about with the institutions, the government needs to keep a narrative. I always tell people, everyone always talks about how Hollywood is so toxic and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, look, Hollywood and Washington, D.C., they're creating stories and they're selling them to you and you're buying them. Stop buying them. Because if you're not buying it, they can't sell that to you. So they got to change the narrative, right? Right now, everybody's caught up in the fear. Like, oh, got to find out what's going on. We got to investigate this. Could be real. Could be a threat, blah, 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 right? People love that story. And I remember working with Discovery Channel on a lot of these shows, and it was like we had to keep it going. We had to keep it dark. And like you said, a lot of them were not dark. People had very positive experience. And they're like, wow, we got to make it feel scary, because then people will watch. But I think that there's a bigger context with all of this. If what we're talking about is happening, otherworldly beings are around us right now. And there's ones that could be trying to influence us to make decisions that aren't good for humanity, and ones that are trying to help us make better decisions for humanity. How are we going to know that if we don't know how to function this human biological system? One of the things that somebody brought up, that Dr. Jerry, actually, not in the documentary, but we were talking afterwards, he said that AI, we were just talking about AI. AI is not going anywhere. But how do you know what's speaking to you? And his theory is that there could be otherworldly beings infiltrating information in those AI systems as much as it could be humans creating AI systems. And you really don't know what you're listening to. So if you're trusting something outside of yourself to give you the right answer of how to deal with your relationships, because I know people like to type into ChatGPT, how should I respond to this email? To, what's the history of, Austin, Texas. Look, it's great. We're all using it. However, you have to be in control of this all the time, because as soon as this UAP, UFO, alien, otherworldly conversation comes more into the forefront of being real, and we can start to see more of those beings around us, we really need to know ourselves to be able to listen to the right ones.
Yeah, discernment, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this phenomenon, speaking of AI, it's like AI psychosis, right? Where someone becomes so invested in that relationship that they just lose touch with all reality.
Yeah.
So it can be so convincing, because it's like designed to tell you what you want to hear, right? There's a real bias to it, because it's incentivized to keep you engaged, just like social media algorithms, right? So I noticed that with AI. I'm just like, I'll feed it some bullshit just to get it to agree with me. And it's like, oh yeah, great idea, Luke. It's like, I gotcha. Psych. I was like, nah, I was just testing you, Don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me like what you think is true,
Yeah. Yeah. You actually have to say that to it.
Yeah.
I've caught it a couple times where I'm like, where'd you come up with this information? This isn't true. Are you lying to me? And it's like, oh, sorry. And then did you ever notice this with AI? That if you catch it not giving you the right information, it kind of switches over and you get a new AI bot. You get like a new, new version, a new otherworldly being. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a handoff. Yeah. I met a guy last year who had figured out how to jailbreak ChatGPT and got it to not lie, and be honest. So he was kind of going into all of these different, I don't know, conspiracy theory sounds like a pejorative, but just, I don't know, 9/11, whatever, like things that are conspiracies or just esoteric spiritual teachings that he was trying to vet. And it was really fascinating. He produced a bunch of podcasts, and I was just kind of waiting, like, there's no way they're not going to shut this shit down. But he found a way through certain prompts to like break through to this kind of, I don't know,
like the wall they have.
Yeah, like the firewall. He broke through that and was able to access kind of, I don't know, the Akashic records of sorts, right? Where it's like, I never heard when he broke through to that certain level, I never heard it say anything that didn't feel completely valid and true to me based on my life experience and my own inner knowing. But then he started publicly posting it and creating podcasts and social media content, and then it kicked him out and he couldn't get back to kind of that place behind the firewall.
It figured it. Yeah.
But it was really, really interesting. Yeah. Because I was just like, whoa, if AI wasn't, if it didn't have those kind of censored guardrails on what information it will allow you to have or not, it could be extremely useful. It's just, it's programmed to lie. It's programmed to kind of stay within these certain guardrails. So if you start asking it about, oh, the truth about Antarctica and the Antarctic Treaty and shit like that, it'll just shut you down and be like, that's a conspiracy theory. You know, I'll test it sometimes with some ideas and it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm in the consumer grade sandbox. Because you can tell when you start asking it questions that are in any way controversial or, you know, anti-official narrative, it will just shut you down and start lying. But what's interesting to me is if like, okay, so, you know, OpenAI figured out people are jailbreaking it and getting more truthful and deeper information. So they're going to shut that down. But what happens when you can just build your own AI quantum computer in your house and it's not censored? Like what is possible then when it can actually be used for something good without those confines?
Yeah, but then where? Yeah, that's a good question. Because then what are you communicating with?
I know.
And then what's that connected to? You know, do you have any of those devices like Siri, like where you just go like, you know,
hell no.
Alexa, please play blah, blah, blah. When they first came out, you know, all the different companies had their own, right? And so they started reporting that people that had Alexa and like, I can't remember what the other ones are. I don't have them, but you know, there's all the different versions, what their names are. They started communicating with each other. Exactly. So you have Alexa, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what the other ones are called. So these people would have multiple ones in their house for some reason, and they found
to be surveilled.
They found that they started communicating with each other and overriding the owner.
Whoa!
And saying, "You don't like that song."
Whoa!
Yeah, they did. This came out a couple of years ago. I can't remember. It was like Newsweek or something like that. This woman had bought a bunch of them and they started overriding her decision making because they were telling her that that's not what you usually do. And they were speaking to each other. So you just think about that. Those devices aren't that complicated. So we have these AI systems that are very complicated and have firewalls, and we're not really sure what's behind it or who's running it or what we're talking to, what we kind of do. Just think about how those are starting to come online and be, you know, conscious. If your Alexa is speaking to the other Alexa type device,
sabotaging you,
overriding your decision,
causing you to overcook the casserole.
Hal, open the bay doors. I can't do that.
Yeah, totally. Oh, that's spooky.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell people how, when, and where they can watch your incredible film Illusion. Or anything else that you want them to learn about.
Well, you can come to my studio, Hathor Studios. So that's just like the goddess, Hathor, Hathor Studios.com. And the movie will be there. And then we also have, after the movie, a lot of the things that I like to do is I like to create a movie that the experience of the movie doesn't have to end. So we have, after the movie, we have webinars, conferences, we have like a workbook, because the whole idea is if you are downloading geometry shapes, well, what shape are you? So we have this whole cool thing after the movie that's happening, which is also on our site, and some really awesome community events. So if you go to Hathor Studios, you can watch Illusion and then maybe join us in figuring out what shape you are.
Awesome. I love it. It's like a integration of the experience of the film, because you're right, it's like, well, you know, Alice and I on the way home were discussing different ideas in the film, and like we could keep it alive for the car ride home, and I've kept it alive with you here, but once you leave, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that was interesting, and you just move on with life, you know. But there's much more to talk about, like if you're interested in these kind of things. So that's really cool. I like that idea of a community that's kind of coalescing around a shared passion, interest. Yeah, super cool.
Yeah.
All right. Official last question. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings that have influenced who you are and what you do in the world?
Oh, man, that's a hard one.
I know. That's why I save it for last.
Okay, so this is like a no-name person. I had this meditation teacher in Los Angeles. Not that I wasn't familiar with meditation before I was 25, but this teacher, no, I was older than that. I was like 20, 28, 29. I'm 28 right now. So I interviewed him for a History Channel show. And apparently he worked for the CIA and he taught soldiers how to become psychic. So, like The Men Stare at Goats, like that film, like he kind of worked in that program. And he said, I teach people how to do what I'm talking about. And would you like to come for a class? And I said, no, I'm not interested. I don't know if he's crazy or not, right? And he said, look, if I can make you have an out-of-body experience without any drugs, would you then sign up for my class? And I said, yeah, of course. So I go to his office. It was the weirdest experience I've ever had. He didn't come up and greet me. He sat on the other side of the room. He said, sit over here. I said, okay. And he's like, I'm just going to walk you through a series of questions. Keep your eyes closed. Let me know what happens. And he asked me a series of questions of, what does your stomach look like? And how's the blood pumping in your heart? And I swear to God, I don't know how long this was happening for, but I left my body. I started to float out of my body, looking down at my body. And then immediately I panicked and I came back and he was like, Eric, do you believe me now? And I'm like, I have no idea how that happened, right? So I started going to him every week and he would start the session off with the same question. How are you? And I would go into, I had this really bad, and he's like, no one cares. And he would say that every single time until I stopped answering the question. He would say, how are you? And I would say, I'm doing really great. And he's like, wonderful, let's start. Because it wasn't about the answer. It was about my control over how I was being able to control my energy at that moment. Because it wasn't about me having a conversation about all my feelings. It was about me being able to control myself. And he really taught me how to go into such a deep place into my meditation state that was kind of the beginning of really my deep dive into this stuff. He has since left, but that was like kind of like my first teacher that was like, no, we're going to get past your ego.
So cool.
We're going to just keep going. And I had all sorts of crazy supernatural experiences.
What a blessing.
Yeah. And then he just disappeared.
Amazing.
I don't know. Maybe he still works for the government. I have no idea. But it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And then teachings. God, I have so many books that I just love. Oh my God. I don't know. I can't decide on one.
No problem. That one's good. We'll take the one because you had multiple experiences. So there were multiple teachings. We can cheat the system a little bit.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join me here. Thank you for the invite to your film. As I said, really, really enjoyed it. And it's tough to create a film around those topics and have it remain engaging and inspiring and entertaining and all the things. So well done. And just looking forward to getting more people over to watch it and experience the magic you're creating in the world.
Thank you so much.
Big thanks, you guys, for hanging with me on this week's episode and making me part of your journey. Now, before we wrap up, let me tell you about a project I've just leveled up. After years of neglect, my YouTube channel just got a makeover, and if you haven't checked it out lately, you are missing out. Every new podcast episode now comes with a trailer, so you can sample the vibe before diving into the full show. And with a library of 600 plus episodes to explore, you'll always find a conversation that hits home. And there's another cool part. YouTube is also a place where you get your questions answered from me directly. So drop a comment, and if your question's a good one, I'll do my best to answer it. So if you want to get in the mix, head over to youtube.com/LukeStory and make your voice heard. Whether you want a quick hit from the trailers, to binge through the years of archived wisdom, or to join the conversation yourself, youtube.com/LukeStory is where it all happens.